Okay, so let's learn about the span keyword inside of the CSS grid. So here, as you can see, to demonstrate that what we are having currently right now. So here it is. So what I'll do here, I'll start from the 1 and I will end at 3. Okay, for the first one. And for the row, I will start from 1 and end at 2. Okay, if I do that, so this happens. And then what I'll do for the second element, I'll just get rid of everything here. All right. So as you can see, this is what happens. Okay. And this is expected as well. But for example, here, what I am doing, I have to keep track of the grid lines, right? For the columns and for the rows. Okay. So I want to start at 1 and then I want to end at 3 and so on and so forth. So we can do that. But there is a little bit more clever way of writing the same code. So what I can do here, I can say like, hey, you should start at 1, okay, grid line 1, and you should span across 2 grid tracks. Okay, so how I can do that? I can do a span and then 2. If I just save that, then the same thing happens. Okay, so as you can see, this particular element is now spanning across 2 grid tracks in the column layout. Okay, so I can do the same thing as well. I can say something like, hey, you should span across 3 grid tracks in the row direction, basically. Hit save. Now, as you can see, it is now spanning across 3 grid tracks inside of the rows, okay, in the row direction. All right, so what I can do, I can just say, okay, span across 1. Okay, just span across only 1 row. Okay, so as you can see, this happens. So now let's do the same thing for this particular element with the class name of 2. Okay, so what I'll do, I will not specify the grid column start and the grid row start. Why is that? Because I am satisfied with the starting position of this particular element. Okay, so that is why I am not doing anything here. So let's do something like, I will just increase the row size here. Okay, so grid row end, and I can do something like span and do something like 3. If I do that, now it is spanning across 3 grid tracks, okay, along the row direction here. Now you might be wondering like, hey, all right, so this layout is good. Now what happens if I have multiple elements here inside of the HTML? So what I can do, I can just uncomment that. And this is the very interesting part of the CSS grid. As you can see, if I just go here, all of the elements are now adjusted by default. Okay, so all of the elements are adjusted by default to fit inside of this particular grid layout. So the first element is spanning across 2 columns, the second element is spanning across 3 rows, and all of the other elements which we have currently right now, they are in their respective places. Okay, so they are able to fit into however they can. And this is one of the most interesting thing about the CSS grid. Okay, so this is basically the span keyword. So whenever you do not want to calculate or count the grid line for the ending of the column and the rows, you can just tell here like, hey, you should span across 2 grid tracks, you should span across 1 grid track, and so on. So you can use the span keyword to span across some of the grid tracks and position your element as you like.